Greetings, digital world, and welcome back once again to another episode of Spliced In Later. I hope you all are keeping well out there in the real world, and I hope that you have enjoyed the bountiful Marvel Cinematic Universe content that we have had over the past week, whether it's having seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness at the cinemas, or binge watching Moon Knight on Disney Plus. It's been some good stuff. A bit of a normal, not too exciting episode today. Mainly, we're just killing time until the next movie comes out that I want to review, and this might be an odd one. There's no reason for me to talk about it. I have discussed it a little bit in the past, but basically what we're doing is we're going to have a brief discussion about the movie Halloween today and the Halloween franchise as a whole. Now, why am I talking about this? Is it because it's Halloween? No. Is it because there's a new Halloween movie coming out this very minute? No. Is it because it's spooky season at any point, anywhere in the world? No. New John Carpenter movie? No. No, the only reason I want to talk about it is because I feel like it. And also, I did just finish watching the last of the Halloween franchise movies that I want to watch. So it's left an interesting impact on me. The whole experience has been rather odd. It started high and it's in a very, very bad place now. But it's worth discussing. I think if I'm going to subject myself to all these movies, I may as well explain why. Now, I believe I've touched on it in the past. We have a history here on this show. A couple years ago, I did a whole episode about horror movies and why I don't like them, or for the most part, like modern day horror films, which, as I've said many a time, is due to the nature of which these movies are set up now and rely heavily on the whole jump scare thing. I will say this until my dying breath. There is a huge distinction between a movie that is scary based on the themes and impact and story that it's telling, and a movie that's scary, with unseen finger quotations, because they make a lot of noise and they startle you. One makes you scared, the other makes you startled. They're two very different things, and one makes a good horror film, and one just makes my life a living hell. I generally don't like to be scared. I think most of us probably agree with that. There are a few people out there who get a kick out of it, and good luck to them, I say. But when it comes to movies, I do appreciate a good horror film that succeeds in a way of using the imagery or the tension to creep me out or unsettle me, which I never used to believe. I used to think all horror movies were bad and I hated them. In fact, if you go back in time to one of my 2020 episode where I talked about the few good horror movies I liked, I think we mostly talked about Get Out, but I did touch on Halloween during that time. I said that a majority of Halloween films that I have seen, a majority of horror films that I have seen have relied heavily on going boo, ah, blah, 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 blah. Specifically, the movie It, starring Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise, but The Conjuring, Annabelle, The Nun, Orphan, all these movies, Paranormal Activity even, which rely heavily on just, maybe they set a spooky mood to begin with, but then it's just, oh, the music's died down, it's really quiet, something is going to jump out at some point and startle me. I don't want to be startled. I'm on edge until it happens. Oh, it has happened. Oh, it's loud. It's intense. Help me. My adrenaline has impacted so heavily that I think I'm scared, but I'm actually just startled. I hate that. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. But I used to think that that was all horror movies. So I associated that feeling with the genre in general, which is why I never saw it. But then for a series of happy circumstances, I started dipping my toe in that world. It was combined with finally watching the movie Get Out, directed by Jordan Peele, and really understanding what a good horror movie can be when it doesn't rely on that shit. And a friend of mine getting me a poster which had 100 movies, a bucket list that I should watch, and you had to scratch off the movie every time you watched it. And there were a couple of horror movies on there, specifically Halloween, The Shining, Rosemary's Baby. There might be one or two others, but they're not jumping out at me at this point in time. And it got to a point where I decided I was going to watch all these movies because I wanted to scratch off every window on the poster. And I wanted to own every movie that was on that poster as well. I don't know why. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing about me. I like to own movies I've seen. Even if I hate them, I seem to be compelled to go and buy them. I don't know why. There's something wrong with me. But I did save these films to last, and I'd save them for a nice sunny Sunday afternoon where I could have the window open and the sound of people moving about nearby, so I knew I was among friends and no one was going to get me. And I watched these films, and all three films are fantastic, completely different in the way they address the horror scheme and the horror thematic. Halloween is a slow build tension, The Shining is a window into a psychotic break, and Rosemary's Baby deals with the spawn of Satan of all things. But each one relied heavily on just building tension, on allowing the imagery and the characters and the suspense of it all to unnerve me and unsettle me in a way that I could appreciate because it was part of the movie experience. And those three films helped me to go, okay, I will try and watch some more horror films. I haven't got around to watching The Thing yet with John Carpenter, but I have allowed myself to see some more modern day horror films that have been described as potentially good, such as A Quiet Place and The Quiet Place Part 2. I've gone through some horror films that have been recommended to me by friends. I recently watched the first 4 films of Scream franchise. I haven't watched Scream 5 yet, but I do intend to do that at some point. So the view I have on horror films is very different to what it was when I first started this podcast, and I would say every other day, oh, I hate horror films, I don't like them, they suck. We went over Get Out quite extensively. I did a whole other episode about The Shining when its spiritual sequel, Dr. Sleep, came out. I really like The Shining, but I absolutely love Dr. Sleep, which for a modern day film, I think there's maybe one jump scare. It's fantastic stuff. But of the original films I saw on the poster, Halloween was my favorite one. There was something simple and special about it. It really stuck with me, the way it told its story. And then I looked into it and saw, okay, like all things horror, it launched a franchise. And because I want to punish myself, even though I can see the reviews steadily decrease with each film, I want to watch all of the films in this franchise. And also because apparently Halloween was not remade, but there was a 2018 Halloween film, which ignored all the films. So it was a direct sequel to Halloween 1. Don't you just love when movies do that? Terminator does it frequently. Oh, the movie wasn't very good. Let's just pretend it didn't happen and just try again. That essentially was what Halloween 2018 was. And it ended up being pretty good, apparently, from what I heard. And then there's Halloween. We'll get to that anyway. So now I've watched them all, and we're going to talk about them. Because there is something so sweet and simple about the original Halloween, and I recommend it to a lot of people. But to a lot of people who know me, who have shared my opinion of horror films, they either don't believe me, they don't believe that I've seen the film, or they don't understand why I'm suddenly pitching it. Halloween 1978 is a very, very, very simple film. I don't know, I think it was independently made. I don't think John Carpenter was a huge name when he made the film. But it's about a night on Halloween. Many, many years ago, there was a young boy called Michael Myers. Something wrong with that kid. He stabbed his sister to death on Halloween. So then he went to a madhouse and he stayed there for pretty much 28 years, I think. Maybe less, maybe more. I don't know or care. But then on the Halloween of 1978, Dr. Loomis, played by Donald Pleasence, he goes to check in on his patient. But oh no, Michael Myers escapes. He steals himself a little Halloween mask, which, fun fact on the side, is that it is a William Shatner mask, which is pretty funny. Heads back to Haddonfield, where he grew up, and he basically is just going to start wailing on teenagers again. He killed his sister right after his sister had hooked up with her boyfriend. So the drive for him seems to be that either he was in love with his sister and he was annoyed at her having sex, or he associates the act of sexual intercourse or sexual or horny or whatever. My cats are horny. They seem to be having a bit of a stop that now. All right. What was I saying? Associating sex and sexuality and all that with needing to be punished with a big old butcher knife. In Haddonfield, we have our young kids. Our main one being Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. They are assortedly babysitting, but really planning on just hooking up with each other. Except for Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode is the virgin, the good girl, the one who isn't focused on hooking up and having sex, but actually just babysitting the kids because that's what she was asked to do. Michael Myers makes his way through, does a bit of stabbing. Eventually, it's a one-on-one battle as he hunts Laurie Strode. Dr. Loomis gets involved as well towards the end. And that's really it. It's not a long movie. It's not an expensive movie. It's not an over-the-top movie. What makes it work so well is that Michael Myers embodies the idea of the boogeyman, just this unstoppable thing that is just pursuing you and wants to kill you. Now, Michael Myers was never supernatural, at least in this movie, in any sense of the word. He was just a very disturbed individual who locked onto these kids and decided he wanted to murder them with a determination that overwhelmed his sense of self-preservation or survival. But he wasn't unstoppable. If you stabbed him, he would feel pain. If you tripped him, he would fall over. I'm sure if you threw him into a fire, he would burn to death. What makes him so scary is just his dogged commitment to coming to get you, and that not only could he be anywhere, but he is everywhere. Behind every dark house, down every pitch black alley, every person who seems to be staring at you from a distance, anyone who's potentially walking towards you, embodies that fear of the unknown and the strange, and what could just one day just come out of the darkness and just end your life. The kills are not bloody in any sense of the word. They're not over the top where people are getting their heads sawn off or legs pulled a la Saw. It is just, he moves on to someone, he stabs him. He moves on to someone else, he stabs him. Late 1970s as well, there's not a lot of CGI and all that stuff, so there's no use of gore. But the implication is enough there to make you go, oh, okay, I don't want to see that. Plus, the performance by Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie, as she slowly loses her sanity, just trying to escape this guy who just wants to kill her, and she really has no idea why, and she doesn't seem to be able to find a way to escape from him. What's great about it as well is we never learn why Michael Myers really wants to do this. We don't know if there's a secret ulterior motive to killing Laurie in this first film. We don't know anything about that because we don't need to. We just need to see if he actually gets her or not. And the ending, extremely open-ended. Michael Myers is by no means defeated. If anything, he's out there somewhere, ready to strike again, and we just don't know where. That's the end of the movie. It is a perfect movie. It is very well acted, very well directed, an incredible use of suspense and disturbing imagery and drama and building dread. That really is what makes those few horror films I like so very good, and why Michael Myers, for me, sticks out as one of the most influential evil figures of horror cinema culture. Now, I highly recommend, if you're looking for a good film and you haven't seen Halloween, you definitely check it out. I don't recommend any of the rest of it by any means, but not in a you definitely shouldn't watch them. There are some you definitely don't need to watch. There are some that are fine. The problem with Halloween's success, as is the case with most movies, Ghostbusters, people seem to not understand, or Hollywood doesn't seem to understand, what makes a movie good. And when they turn it into a franchise, when they make it a sequel, they seem to discard all the things that made the film good and focus on the cliche or amplifying stuff that didn't make the film good. Or they just go too far. And you end up with, for example, Ghostbusters. You start off with a film that's just a very simple comedy about a couple of fellas starting a business, to a bloody starry-eyed drama about kids and their fathers and grandfathers and all that stuff. God, Ghostbusters Afterlife sucks. Anyway, Halloween became that. It was very successful. It made a lot of money based on the fact that it didn't cost a lot of money to make. Word of mouth spread. It got a huge cult following as well for midnight screening, kind of like Rocky Horror. So naturally everyone's like, okay, well, we got to make more of these. We got to make more of these. How many Halloween films do you think are out there? There are, in fact, 10. There may even be 11. I'm just thinking off the top of my head after my recent Halloween experience, but I'm pretty sure there are only 10. There may even be 9. It's anywhere between 9 to 11. And a lot of them are just the same thing, but slightly cheaper and slightly less scary, or completely over the top and stupid. At the end of the day, all I really recommend is Halloween. It's a perfect cinema experience. You don't need to know what happens to Michael Myers and Laurie Strode and Dr. Loomis afterwards. However, Halloween 2, of all the others, Halloween 2, the original Halloween 2, is perfectly fine, I think. It by no means captures the fear of the first Halloween, but if you're one of those people who needs an ending to things. For example, I mean, I'm one of them in this regard. If you watch Rocky, and although Rocky is a great film, you really want to know what happened to Rocky after that. Did he really defeat Apollo Creed? Did he go back in there? You can watch Rocky 2 and you get those answers. Halloween 2 is very much the same. Halloween 2 just continues the night. So after that confrontation between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode and Dr. Loomis, it's basically just what happened after that. And it provides you with a definitive, intense, final conclusion to the Michael Myers story. What happens to him at the end of the movie, what happens to him, Laurie Strode and Dr. Loomis at the end. You get your finality to the story. It may not be at all to the high level standard of suspense and action and horror that the first one is, but it serves its purpose of wrapping up that story fine. And I suppose I do recommend Halloween 3, but not because it's a good Halloween sequel, because it's batshit weird in a good way. There was a point after Halloween 2 where the powers that be behind the Halloween franchise didn't actually want to continue doing Michael Myers and Laurie Strode and all those people. They said Halloween 2, definitive conclusion. What we're going to do now of our next Halloween film, and for every film after, is we're going to turn it into an anthology story. It will have the Halloween title on it, but the story we tell, the horrors we tell, the imagery, all of that stuff, completely brand new original story. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Michael Myers is nowhere to be found. There is no Haddonfield. There is no Laurie Strode. It is a really twisted story of this CEO who is basically tormenting children by giving them Halloween masks, which he tells them to wear on their heads. And then when they watch TV with the masks on their head, when his ad comes on, the mask turns their heads into bugs. It's really weird. I don't want to talk too much about it because it's definitely an experience to watch it, especially if you didn't even know, as I did, that it wouldn't have anything to do with Michael Myers when I first watched it. But it's a unique, weird-ass horror story that benefits from that 80s cheese. So yeah, give Halloween 3 a try if you're interested. Obviously, that didn't catch on. Halloween 4 is the return of Michael Myers, and from that point onwards, things get out of hand. Michael Myers becomes an unstoppable, unkillable machine who can be buried alive and burnt alive and just keeps coming for you. He's essentially, I guess he's the spawn of the devil, or he's an undead demon who's coming to get you. They also throw in some meaningless backstory that means nothing as to why he's constantly going after Laurie Strode, whether it's this feeling that he needs to kill her because he failed the first time, coupled with, oh, we could actually be brother and sister, or not. Then he kills her, but then she comes back, but then he goes after her ancestors, or he goes after her relatives with the same butcher knife. And then poor old Donald Pleasence as Dr. Loomis basically acted himself into the grave, constantly coming back. He is the one shining point of the Halloween franchise. He gives it 120% every performance he does. Dr. Loomis becomes a cartoon by the end of it, but Donald Pleasence seems to know that, I think, and he plays him like he himself is just completely losing his sanity every single movie, and by the end he barely can hold it together. Unfortunately, he died during the last Halloween, and rather than out of respect for him, they cut the ending, had him walk off screen, there's a scream, and then they go, in loving memory of Donald Pleasence, and that's the end of that. That's the end of Donald Pleasence's career. Very upsetting. I guess a fun fact is Paul Rudd was in that movie, but otherwise they're silly, they're cheap. You could argue that they feel like direct-to-TV movies that are just really desperate to milk that Halloween brand for all it's worth, but at the end of the day, not worth your time. I guess at some point, something had to give, and it became an idea to not so much reboot the franchise, but as I said, just pretend all that mayhem that became the Halloween franchise that turned it into a joke. In 2018, they just released, as is the case with a lot of revivals, just another film called Halloween. But to its credit, that 2018 Halloween, despite it being a bit too violent for my liking, I think the kills that it is are a bit too gross and over the top, really. But it does capture that tension and intrigue and spirit of the original Halloween, where it's just Michael Myers strolling into town to kill some people. They do the exact opposite of what they've done with the franchise, and even though Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode, she believes, oh, Michael Myers is out to get me, he's coming to get me, he does not give a single shit about her. He just likes killing, and he comes into town to kill people. It's a surprisingly good movie with a bit silly twists and turns and some bit gory stuff for my liking, but overall, compared to what I had just experienced of all the other Halloween films, not so bad. Halloween Kills. Now, obviously, they made this. Apparently, there was a plan to have a trilogy. Halloween Kills suffered from getting delayed by COVID, and I think the script was reworked or some changes were made. I've been told there seems to be a consensus that the worst thing that could have happened to movies in terms of the COVID pandemic was people were allowed to fiddle with them for too long. There's a person who worked on Morbius who says that the movie that came out is completely different to the final movie product that they had signed off on in 2019 and gone, yep, that's the movie that's being released in 2020. Why? Apparently he says that the directors and the people involved were just constantly fixing it or tidying it up or adding stuff here or there, Frankensteining it until by the end it became the Morbius we all know and love. Halloween Kills apparently went through the same thing. You watch it and you can tell that it's trying to reference the pandemic and it's trying to reference Donald Trump and current political climate, but it becomes an absolute joke. Where Halloween 2018 recaptured the love and suspense and original, the Halloween Kills captured the ridiculous stupidity of the rest of the franchise in terms of Haddonfield going absolutely batshit bananas, forming a mob to try and kill Michael Myers, to Michael Myers walking out of a burning building completely unscathed, to the ridiculous dialogue, to using Bob Odenkirk's picture in the movie for some reason. It's absolutely terrible. I've never hated a movie more. I did only just watch it on the weekend, so it's only just sitting with me, but I had been warned in advance from reviews and from people talking to me that what it was a bit of a joke, but and the violence as well, it's become like a Saw thing at this point. It's what terrible, gruesome, violent way can Michael Myers hurt people, and that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for the suspense and the uneasiness, not blood-soaked geysers coming out of people's heads when knives are rammed into them, or their carotid arteries are that's not a word, but when they got piano wire snaked through their neck, and people running around with baseball bats in a hospital hunting down psychotically disturbed individuals, because why not? Absolutely terrible. What was the point of this episode? I think after I rambled about all the other stuff, the moral of the story here is that I was wrong in that all horror films are bad, and I have really changed my stance on them in the last 2 years. The few horror films that I have allowed myself to experience based on heads up that it is what I'm looking for: Halloween, The Shining, Rosemary's Baby, Doctor Sleep, A Quiet Place, Scream, Alien. This stuff has become better, and I actually actively seek that type of film experience based on that tension and that unease. I think that's pretty damn good. However, I just wanted to spotlight Halloween specifically because of all the horror films I have seen thus far. Halloween, the original, definitely is my favorite. There's no contest, I think, in the simplicity of it, in the unnervingness of it. Oh, the score as well, incredible score for it. It's great. But I thought I couldn't just talk about it without addressing the fact that I put myself through the torture of watching all the Halloween franchise and just trying to understand what Hollywood is thinking with this stuff and Ghostbusters and anything else, where they just seem to completely lose the plot when it comes with making sequels to movies. Either leave a movie alone, or if you're going to make a sequel, understand what it was that made the movie good and work on that. I don't know. I don't understand what's going on. But at the very least, I think you can watch that Halloween, that first movie, and even though you know that those other movies exist, you don't have to watch them. You don't have to touch them. Except for those maybe 2 and 3 if you want to, for a nice conclusion to Halloween story, and then for a batshit season of The Witch. But if it is only just that first Halloween, you can safely watch it and feel like I don't need to watch anything else. You don't need to be like me, who actively seeks ways to punish himself and to make his life a misery, which I did by watching all of these Halloween films. There you are. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. I'll be back next week, at the very least, for a movie review where I'll be reviewing Top Gun Maverick, It just depends if I want to do an episode before that at my regular time slot. It will very much depend on how I'm feeling next week, which could go either way. You'll just have to wait and see. But very least, Top Gun 2 review is coming, so look forward to that. Until then, I love and appreciate you as always. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I will catch you on the next Spliced In Later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.